So there's a really awesome and unique build in Ghost of Tsushima that will completely change the way you play this game, and not just that, it's also going to turn you from a samurai into a full-blown archery master that never has to touch his sword or knife ever again. And actually, I've been playing with the Bowmaster build for the past couple of days. It's really a blast to play with it because it changes the game completely for you. So basically with this build, you're going to have an infinite amount of arrows, you're going to constantly stay back and shoot enemies from afar, and bonus points, you're going to be able to constantly stop down the time and none of the enemies are even going to be able to touch you. So let's jump right into it with all of the items and details you need to know, and as always, a thumbs up on this video would be super appreciated. I also want to give a huge shout out to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this channel. They've been a huge part of it for the past year. They've been organizing a ton of giveaways, but they also sell games at some of the cheapest prices you can find around. I constantly use them, so if you also want to do that and get some of the best discounts you can find around, definitely go ahead, check out the links in the description box down below, as well as in the pinned comment. Let's begin with the item build. You can see it right here. If you want to copy it down, go ahead and do so, but I will provide some explanations for the items that I have chosen for this build. Now, of course, the most important is going to be the armor set. The only one that actually fits with this build is Tadaori's armor set. Luckily enough, you can get this really early on, as early as Act 1 in the first part of the island, and you can find the NPC that puts you on that track right here on this side of the map. But otherwise, when fully upgraded, this provides some of the best stats towards this build. This includes the headshots that restore 50% concentration meter and the increase to total concentration by 2 seconds. Of course, we also have that nice knocking and reload speed by 30% that can also be augmented later with other charms. This also brings us to the next very important item on the list, and that is the charm of IZANAGI. Basically, it makes it so that landing headshots has a 40% chance to return arrows back into your quiver, and don't worry, we will turn that into 80% in no time. But this is also very important. It's a reward from the Winding Mountain Shrine in the first map, so it's again a very easy drop that you can get very early on in the game, but you will need that hook over there in order to reach some of the higher places, so you might want to do some of the starting missions until you get that. But you will find it on this side of the map, by the way, if you were wondering, and it's one of the most important items for this build. The reason for that is because we're gonna be doing two things with this build. First of all, we're gonna aim for the headshots, and this is going to give us two bonuses. First of all, it's going to give us some of the arrows back when we hit the headshots, and second of all, it's also going to replenish the concentration meter. Basically, you're going to be able to constantly stay in the concentration meter as long as you aim those headshots, and as you can see, that can be literally way too OP even for this game. For the second charm slot, you can pick whatever you want to, but there are two main choices that I would recommend. The first one is the very item that I have right here. I cannot pronounce that, so I'm not going to even try, but this is basically the charm that provides a moderate amount of bonus damage when you have a full amount of health. So this is basically exactly fitted for this build because you're constantly going to stay out of enemies' reach and you're constantly going to have that HP to the maximum. Now, to get this, you will need to be pretty far into the main story, up until you reach the last part of the island, and to be more specific, this is a reward on this side of the map. But if you haven't reached that point, or if you want an alternative, then you can also use the charm of AMATERASU that gives you back a ton of HP when killing enemies, and this can be a good substitute for that since it's also a very early reward from Act 1. But otherwise, this also brings us to the technique points, and it goes without saying that you will need to have fully invested into that archery skill line. And to be more specific, it's because you will need the concentration skill unlocked so that you can stop down time, as well as the bonus cooldown timers that make it even better by up to 50% if I'm not mistaken. But let's move over to the rest of the minor charms, and of course it's also recommended to have all of the 4 minor charm slots unlocked, as these are going to be also very useful. But the first two that are very important and the ones that cannot be skipped are the charms of Fortune 2. You can actually get 2 of these throughout the entire game. The first one is earlier, so this is going to be from one of the side missions called Peace for the Divine that you can find in the old Toyotama Hills on this side of the map. But the other one is a little bit later in the game. It's from one of Ishikawa's tales, basically the 8 out of 9 tale called Friends in Passing. This is going to be one of the rewards from that, and it is definitely going to be very useful because both of these charms of fortunes can be stacked with one another. So basically the effects on these make it so that percentage chances on other items and abilities are increased by 50% for each of these charms charms that you have. But as I've said, you can stack both of these so that chance is now 100%, which essentially means that whatever other percentage chance you have on other gear is going to be essentially doubled, which brings us again back to that charm of IZANAGI. So instead of only having a 40% chance to return arrows into your quiver when you're landing a headshot, now it is 80%, which essentially means that you can go in and constantly shoot your arrows and you will almost never deplete your arrow count because you're constantly going to be able to return them back automatically into your quiver. You can even see that pop up on the screen once it happens, so when you hit a headshot you will see that the arrow now appears into your inventory as if you picked it from the ground. Now there's also another way to get more arrows back on top of the ones that you're getting, and this includes one charm of swift return that you get a little bit later into the game. So this is another reward from Ishikawa's Tales, basically the tale number 6 out of 9 that rewards you this one right here. It's also very important because standard arrows have a 25% chance of being recoverable, which in turn is going to be 50% with those 2 charms of fortunes that we have. So basically what this means is that if you shoot an arrow and it misses the target, you can go and collect it from the ground. Likewise, if you shoot it into a tree or whatever, you can go in and collect some of these back, like 50% of them with like all of those charms of fortune. But there's also a hidden effect to it, and that is you can also recover them from the enemy's body because it also appears physically on them. So for example, if you shoot an arrow in the enemy's head, it kills them, you get an arrow back into your inventory from that effect from the charm of IZANAGI, but you're still able to recover most of the arrows still stuck into the enemies, which basically makes you so that you can get more arrows back than the ones that you're shooting, essentially turning you into an infinite arrow generating machine. But of course there's also the final charm slot, and there are a few options over here that could be really useful. One of my favorites was charm of efficiency because it gives you another 15% increase to knocking and reload speed. So basically you can draw in arrows much faster, 45% with that bonus on the armor as well, and this also means you can shoot enemies much faster since you don't have to wait for the knocking, especially on that longbow. There's also a charm of precision that you can put instead of it, especially if you didn't fully upgrade your bows and cannot take enemies in one shot, so this can provide a nice moderate increase to your arrow damage, which could be useful sometimes in the early game. And there's also a third option that I haven't played with, but that is YURIKO'S Keepsake. You get these from one of YURIKO'S well, side tales. Basically both of them actually reward you these, so you can get 2 of them, and each one of them provides 15% chance for arrows to poison enemies. This in turn is going to turn to 30% if you use the charms of fortune and 60% if you use 2 of them, but that will occupy 2 slots and you will have to sacrifice some of the other ones that I find to be much better. And again, I wouldn't use poison for this build since you're aiming for headshots and not to poison enemies. But here are also a number of tips and tricks that will make this build truly flourish. So if you go in an enemy camp, go in and just like attract everybody. Just get everybody in a line to follow you, and once you're like a few meters away from them, start aiming and shoot for the heads. If they have helmets on the heads, then of course use the longbow since that can penetrate the helmet. Otherwise, if their heads are exposed, just use the half bow since that can deal a great job as well. Even more so since it draws in much quicker. But from here on, you aim the headshots, shoot the arrows, it's going to deal huge damage, instantly killing most of the enemies, but most important of them all, it's going to further increase that concentration so you can stay 5 seconds into it and constantly replenish 2.5 seconds of it with each subsequent kill to the head. Then it's also going to give you like all of those arrows back constantly from shooting enemies in the head, and you can just do this over and over again, and as you can see the results speak for themselves. I mean, everybody just dies and nobody can even touch you because they die before they can even reach you. And yeah, let's not forget about the fact that if you do somehow lose the arrows, like missing them and whatnot, you can still collect them back either from the enemy's bodies, like from their shields, or also from the ground and whatever else they've landed onto. But this is it with the build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know down below if you had fun with it. I kind of want to see all of your screenshots and all of your like killing moments with this build because they are truly marvelous. In the meantime, also don't forget to subscribe to this channel and activate that notification bell if you want to get these videos as early as possible. It also helps me with the algorithm and whatnot, and I will see you guys in the next one, so peace out.